Hey, Chris from Mighty Decibel here. Welcome back. This episode, we're going to introduce a new series called A History of, and specifically, we're going to be talking about and listening to some of the best early speed metal albums, and within its first 5 years. So I guess the first thing we should do is talk about, what is speed metal, and most succinctly that you can explain it is simply it's traditional metal sped up. It's speedy. Uh, so in the 70s, late 70s, and early 80s, traditional metal bands inserted ultra speedy tracks within their traditional metal albums, and those tracks would then become what we now call proto speed metal. So some examples for you. 1977, Judas Priest issued Sin After Sin, and on that was Call for the Priest. Following year, Priest were added again with Exciter off their Stained Class release. And then the year after that, in 1979, Motorhead introduced the double bass drum propelled title track for Overkill. And another example would be in 1982, Accept issued Restless and Wild, and on that was the much lauded Fast as a Shark. So let's move on from the proto speed metal into speed metal. But before that, I think there's a couple of side notes that we have to cover. First of all, one of the questions that always comes up is just what the hell is the difference between speed metal and thrash metal? So it's relatively simple in my mind. Speed metal, as we said before, is traditional metal sped up. Whereas thrash metal is a direct descendant from speed metal. Metal wasn't born until 2 years after the initial speed metal album was issued. So thrash is basically speed metal married with punk rock, hardcore punk to be specific. So not as straight line from trad metal. Secondly, there are many speed metal bands evolved into thrash or power metal. So what we're going to focus in today is on speed metal albums, not speed metal bands per se. And should note that this is not an exhaustive list by any means. We're just talking about highlights within the first 5 years of the subgenre. So let's get into it. So it wasn't until 1981 that the first true speed metal album was issued. And so we're talking about here an album dedicated to speed all the way through. And that was Raven's Rock Till You Drop. So, crazed and outrageous here are good descriptors of this new wave of British heavy metal album. So it's loose screwed, bolts flying everywhere. The album cover perfectly encapsulates what this album sounds like.
You can shut it down.
The next album that is a highlight within the speed metal evolution was issued 2 years later in 1983. It's Exciter's debut, Heavy Metal Maniac. So here was a clear case of a band evolving from their Priest and Sabbath roots into a speed metal beast. And it was topped off by the amazingly over-to-the-top guitar work from John Rizzi and the hair-raising banshee vocals of Dan Beehler. I still consider this the greatest speed metal album of all time.
You better run and hide. The beast will roll from deep inside.
Later in 1983, another important album within the speed metal genre was issued, and that was Slayer's debut, Show No Mercy. So a little bit of a cheat here in that it's not a pure speed metal album. It's a hybrid speed/thrash metal album, but it has enough of the speed metal in it to warrant inclusion here. And of course, Slayer would evolve into a straight up, or I should say, the thrash metal band of all time. A year later, in 1984, Anthrax issued their speed metal debut, Fistful of Metal. Similar to Slayer, later they would evolve into a full-on thrash metal act. Later on in 1984, Gravedigger introduced themselves to the world with their debut Heavy Metal Breakdown. So here we have staccato blasted speed metal with guttural vocals from Herr Boltenthal. So they would later evolve into a power metal band.
Chosen hands for fucking us.
Germany and stay in 1984 as Running Wild issued their debut Gates of Purgatory. So very similar to Gravedigger in sound in that it's staccato blasted speed, toughened further by guttural vocals. And of course, Running Wild would go the pirate metal route later on. We move into 1985 for our next landmark release, that being Agent Steele's debut, Skeptic's Apocalypse. So this could be described as Priest on amphetamines, with a vocalist who could raise the dead a la Halford. Back to Germany for our last of important early speed metal albums, that being Halloween's Walls of Jericho, their debut. So savage rhythmic efficiency here, killer instrumentation, and amazing high-pitched vocals from Kai Hansen. Of course, Halloween would go the power metal route going forward, similar to Gravedigger and Running Wild. I consider this the second best speed metal album of all time. So there you have it, a quick history of the first 5 years of speed metal, all of which these albums should be in your collection if you're into extreme metal, because the speed metal begat thrash metal. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and remember to check in every Monday for our new release Mondays. Tuesdays we have our In 40 Minutes series where we shine the light on the best tracks from underrated bands, and then on Thursdays that's when we do our best ofs, our top 10s, that sort of thing. And as always, I encourage you to check out our website, www.themightydecibel.com. where now you'll find a new link on the top portion of our website, Discog store. Hit that yellow button, and it'll take you to the our new online store, where some of these CDs and vinyl and tapes, DVDs of our collection are up for sale now. Have a great one, and we'll chat with you later.